Well, the White House insists Soleimani was assassinated in order to prevent an imminent attack on US interests. On Sunday, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's been pushing for a tougher stance on Iran, appeared on all 5 Sunday political shows to make the case that this was a risk worth taking.
We would have been culpably negligent had we not taken this action. The American people would have said that we weren't doing the right thing to protect and defend American lives. President Trump has been crystal clear.
Is it that imminent? Is the threat, is what the attacks he was putting together so imminent and so big it would have been seen as that kind of negligence?
We made the right decision.
OK, so what do we actually know about that intelligence? Ben Cardin is a Democratic senator on the Foreign Relations Committee. He joins us now from Capitol Hill. Senator Cardin, thanks very much for joining the programme. Have you seen intelligence that suggests to you that there was an imminent attack planned under the auspices of Qasem Soleimani?
Well, it's good to be with you. No, we have not gotten that information. There will be a briefing on Wednesday, and we'll see what information is made available. But we have not seen the imminent threat that the president was talking about, which is the only authorization he could use to use force because Congress has the authority on force, and we have not given the administration the right to use force against Iran. So there would have to be an imminent threat against America to use force against Iran.
And just to be clear, Qasem Soleimani has been a threat to American interests in the region for decades now. So would there, in your mind, have to be something that had changed substantially in the intelligence in the last few weeks to have justified this?
Under our Constitution and under the War Powers Act, if the president wanted to carry out this attack without there being an imminent threat, he would have had to work with Congress in order to get the appropriate authorization. He chose not to do that. So Congress has not been engaged in this process. In America, we don't give our president the unauthorized use or the blanket use of military without the authority of Congress. So there is no authorization. So unless there was an imminent threat, the president legally did not have the authority to carry this out.
But, Senator, I would have thought step 1 of any strategy is to stop terrorist proxies from attacking American troops and the interests of allies in the region. He was the man orchestrating it all. Surely, for many people, that's not so controversial.
No, and I agree with that. Clearly, we will go against terrorists wherever we find terrorists. But you have to engage the Article 1 branch of government, the legislative branch of government. You need to have that type of exchange. We need to understand the game plan. We have to understand what comes next. The consequences of this action, we know, were provocative, and it's likely to accelerate a conflict between the United States and Iran. That's something that we needed to evaluate and needed to be evaluated in a more democratic process.
So Nancy Pelosi says the House will vote on a war powers resolution this week. What would that do?
The resolution that will be brought up in the House, I hope also in the Senate, would say that absent authorization from Congress, the president does not have authority to use military against Iran.
OK, Senator Ben Cardin, thank you so much for joining us there from Capitol Hill. The Senate, of course, will get that briefing of the full Senate on Wednesday from the White House. This is the question, I think, the Senator was getting to there. There's the legal issue, there's the moral issue, but there's really, most importantly, there's the strategic issue about whether this was a risk worth taking for the United States to kill Qasem Soleimani, given that President Bush and President Obama had this opportunity in the past. The Pentagon had offered these occasions, and on those occasions, it was turned down because it was felt that this was not something that was worth doing because the retaliation would be so big. On the other hand, if this has been such a strategic blow to Iran, and if Iran now believes that America would respond with full force, maybe it would pay off. Maybe it was a gamble worth taking.
And the politics of it, Cathy, there's 2020 for Donald Trump and 2020 for the Democrats as well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there are still 28 days to go until the Iowa caucus. I think it depends how much this carries on ramping up over those 28 days. If this has died down, if the Iranians take their time and decide to retaliate in the summer or in the autumn, then probably as a national security issue, it fades away a little bit. You know, we live in such a frenetic news cycle, right? Things can fade very fast, and it doesn't become such a big issue in the Iowa caucuses, at least for the Democrats. But, you know, 28 days to go, a lot can happen, right?
A lot can happen in 28 days. Absolutely. Well, of course, there have been plenty of threats already made by the Iranians, and foreign forces in the region are particularly vulnerable. So let's take a look at them. The UK currently has around 400 troops in Iraq, concentrated in Baghdad, Taji and Erbil.
The Americans have more, of course, 5,200 personnel in bases across Iraq. That's in addition to American forces based across the wider Middle East. There are 800 American troops who are still in Syria. They could be vulnerable now to attacks from local pro-Iranian militias. There are also 3,000 American personnel in Jordan. Some 30 to 40,000 Americans are stationed at military bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
There are, of course, oil and gas facilities which are also vulnerable, as are the Straits of Hormuz. And finally, there are 14,000 US troops in Afghanistan, which shares a very porous 600-mile border with Iran.